Story 1. I teach 7th graders. Most of them believe they will be earning $200,000 per year. They cannot read at grade level. Many think they will become famous on YouTube. Story 2. According to our children, they do not believe my wife and I when we say that texting used to cost 10 cents per message and that we had many minutes available to use on our phones. Story 3. I guess Skibbity Toilet is pretty silly. I think even they realize that now. Story 4. That influence equals value. No, verification is cheaper than ramen, but it does not feed your soul. Story 5. That everything has to be labeled. Enjoying a tidy house is not obsessive-compulsive disorder. Having a song stuck in your head is not attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Preferring to be in your own company is not autism. Your parents getting frustrated because you won't tidy your room is not abuse. Feeling sad for a couple of days is not depression. Preferring texting over calling is not anxiety. Your friend who happens to be gay does not need to be known as your gay friend at all times. Story 6. You are allowed to type words like kill, gun, suicide, etc. It is not illegal. Story 7. Punctuation and grammar matter. Basic literacy is important. The lack of writing skills is appalling. I was once called a bigot for saying that people can and will make judgments about your intelligence and take you less seriously for bad writing. Story 8. That Helen Keller really did not exist or that she did not have an exceptional life while also being blind and deaf. I have come across many children who believe this or that she was faking it, which boggles the mind. Story 9. Internet communities and their social norms are relevant and applicable in offline life. Story 10. They somehow have a greater wealth of information and brain power than previous generations. Anyone under the age of 45 has had access to the internet and unlimited information since high school. If you want to talk about baby boomers, yes, but if you think you are somehow intuitively smarter than your millennial uncle, you would be wrong. The arrogance of some younger people I have worked with is off the charts to the point where I cannot even teach them what they need to know, and then they fail and complain they are not getting promoted. Story 11. The rights and freedoms that older generations have fought for cannot be taken away. Story 12. That education and hard work do not significantly increase your chances of success. Somewhere along the line, people got it in their heads that success was promised. It never was and never will be, but good choices make success possible. Story 13. People with the loudest voices represent the group as a whole. Story 14. That constant social media consumption is not damaging their brain. Story 15. They believe that every bad thing that happens to them is caused by someone else and not by their own poor decisions or inaction. Story 16. Some believe the myth that colonialism, gender roles, slavery, and greed are intrinsic only to Europeans and were absent elsewhere until Europeans influenced those regions. Story 17. Many young people use fabricated mental health conditions and disorders as excuses to avoid taking personal responsibility. Story 18. That millennials are cringy but somehow they are not. No, they are also cringy. We are just less self-conscious about it. Over time, you generally care less about other people's opinions. Story 19. They invented sex, as the old saying goes. It's true, though. Every new generation thinks they have discovered or invented all the naughty things, all the rebellious things, all the smart ideas about how to fix the world, all the evils. Even political discourse is swayed by it. The notion that a current leader is the worst ever because people have no idea how many monsters came before. This tendency used to be a normal, healthy part of child development, that final stage where young people enter the bigger world, think they know how it works, then discover that they do not and undergo a humbling and vital lesson for adulthood. But then the balance changed. Cynical corporate entities amplified the youthful voice, telling it that it was inventive, unique, and special. They claimed it had indeed invented sex, and that their brand was ready to provide everything needed to express those wonderful new things discovered or created, or to amplify that voice. Surely the most important thing was to be heard, rather than learning to listen. Now there have been multiple generations of young people who were never sufficiently humbled by the reality of the world, yet have been besieged by it. Fighting battles they do not even know they are fighting, doomed to lose repeatedly, trapped in an endlessly repeating present. It is impossible to hold on to what you have and prevent backward slides when you never really knew what you had. Story 20. Hustle culture is a way for companies to increase profits while exploiting their employees. Story 21. The niche groups people interact with online are reflective of real life. The values and social or political norms of the communities they engage with online are not necessarily how the world operates. It is easy to spend a lot of time online and come away thinking that everyone is socially stunted, mentally ill, and chronically online, needing 24 hours notice and 3 hours of aftercare to receive any form of criticism or have their ideas challenged. However, when you go to work or to the store, you realize most people are just normal individuals. Story 22. That and Frank did not exist and Helen Keller was a fraud or hoax. This came from my college-age Generation Z niece. She saw it on TikTok, you know. Story 23. We need the internet. There is actually a world outside the internet. You can turn your back on the entire internet and live a great life. Story 24. That everything is predetermined. I am so sick of this phrase and the nihilistic cynicism infecting everything, especially online. Yes, things in the United States are very, very problematic right now, but checking out is not going to fix anything. Get involved. That everything needs to be hyper-specifically defined to a ludicrous degree. Not every action, behavior, or belief needs its own special designation. That people are not allowed to make mistakes. I think a lot of this relates to how much younger people's lives are online and how much of their activities are self-recorded and photographed. That being said, mistakes are a part of growth. One misstep or misspoken word requires someone to be canceled and their lives ruined. There is a huge difference between someone being bigoted and pathological versus someone making a one-off mistake. Story 25. It is impossible to meet people without dating applications. Yes, you have to leave your house to do it, but if you go out into the world, it is still full of other people. Stop trying to order a girlfriend on the internet. Story 26. Same thing I did, believing I live in an invincible country that rules the world and nothing bad is allowed to happen to me. I was obviously very wrong. Story 27. That politicians, any politician, care about us. People seem to think they have to be on one team or the other. Neither team is for us. Story 28. Going out for a $100 dinner, $50 drinks, $25 lunches, and spending a few $1,000s to visit friends multiple times a week does not impact one's financial ability to do what they want. Story 29. That being different means you are neurodivergent. It used to be that people could just be weird. Now, if you are different, you are obviously attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or autistic. And if you have not been diagnosed, that is just because all the doctors are wrong. Story 30. That happiness is the meaning of life, and discomfort should be avoided. Story 31. Assaulting people in public and filming it for the internet is not a prank. Story 32. Finding a job that you love. All work is challenging. If work were fun, they would not have to pay you to do it. Get a job that pays well, and happiness will follow when you get to retire early. Story 33. Being an alpha will help you succeed socially. The boys need to stop relying on the algorithm and spend more time outside. Story 34. We oppose their suggestions because we are afraid to try something new. The truth is that in most cases, the ideas were tried and failed. Story 35. They do not need to serve time. They should not jump straight to the top of the hierarchy just because they graduated. Story 36. As I get older, I have come to appreciate that not everything which is true can be proven, and not everything you think has been proven is true. Story 37. That baby boomers all conspired against them to ruin the economy for them. Story 38. Being a millennial and having a deep distaste for all the takes that we are coddled or want everything handed to us, I have noticed that community work led by people from our generation has significant room for improvement. Many millennials seem to believe that communities just manifest out of shared interest, without a need for people to organize and structure. I can only speak about the queer community in Germany, so there are many qualifiers, but most queer spaces here are still very Schwulenszene, or gay culture, which is distinctly different from queer culture, at least in my opinion. One reason is that no one is stepping up. Locations, spaces, and events remain organized and controlled by activists who were part of the activism movement in the 1980s, and the way they are organized, set up, and even decorated reflects this. Story 39. They falsely believe in their own hype like we are Generation Z, and think they are very different. For as long as humanity has existed, there has always been a new generation. Story 40. We are robots repeating the same day over and over again. Story 41. Gender roles. We went from advocating for cooperative sports and equal pay to following women in bathrooms, demanding genital checks, girl dinner, I'm just a girl/boy, and 10-year-olds having 21-step skincare routines and wearing halter tops. More. Young boys believe women do not deserve equal pay or job opportunities than a few years ago. Girls are aspiring to be traditional wives and content creators on subscription platforms. Overall, none of these kids are learning and are just parroting harmful ideologies. Story 42. The vaporizers are completely safe and do not affect their future health. Story 43. Feelings and self-expression take priority over societal contribution. Story 44. The idea of enduring at work for 40 years and then enjoying retirement is outdated. Young people respond, no thanks, I'd rather burn out in 5 years and rethink life. Story 45. The younger the generation, the better they are at identifying societal problems, but the worse they are at realizing that while most societal problems are impossible to solve without collective effort, the impact of those problems on a person's life can be greatly reduced by that person's actions. I see many young people not taking action because the problem feels greater than themselves. Example 1. There is a loneliness problem with Generation Z. It is a well-documented issue. This does not prevent you personally from taking steps to address it in your life. Join or create a community around something you like. Approach new people and so on. Example 2. There is a significant emotional crisis among young men who often have no emotional support system. Fixing this as a society is difficult, but nothing stops you from reaching out to a friend you have noticed withdrawing lately. I am not saying older generations take more of these actions. They are also mostly stuck at identifying problems. It is baffling to me how good young people are at identifying issues but entirely give up on fixing them, even in their personal lives. Do not stop trying to improve your lived experience and that of your loved ones. Story 46. That the algorithm is working for you and not whatever corporate overlord owns it. If the algorithm was actually tracking my internet history and trying to give me things I want, my results should be way more relevant. How many times do I have to Google queer space opera before someone tries to sell me a queer space opera? No, I don't want to read Nicholas Sparks. Stop showing me ads for his books. Or I happen to discuss kneading yogurt in front of smart devices and I get 10,000 ads for dairy yogurt. Come on, you've got more than 10 years of credit card history and you still can't figure out that I'm allergic to milk? The algorithm, and now artificial intelligence, is bad at knowing what you actually want or need. Story 47. Politics. It is crazy how we vote for one wealthy individual every 4 years and call it a democracy. Story 48. Our parents had no means to contact us, we could not be tracked, and our lives were not posted everywhere. So we got up to all sorts of mischief that they could not even imagine, and anything they think is bad pales in comparison. Story 49. As a teacher, sadly a good portion of my students think education is worthless. I cannot exactly disagree in terms of the public, but many of them feel failed by school. Story 50. That TikTok is not inherently harmful to your brain or mental health. Story 51. Value judgments based solely on race, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Not long ago, we celebrated discarding those regressive ideas and did our best, albeit not always successfully, to evaluate our peers by their actions and intent rather than the color of their skin or anatomy. At that time, the political left was sharply critical of abuse of wealth rather than giving it a pass as long as individuals signaled their virtue on social media. Unfortunately, Occupy Wall Street was the closest we ever got to addressing the wealth gap before the conversation suddenly shifted in an entirely different direction, almost as if intentionally. Story 52. That things in the United States will work out without them being proactive in shaping their futures. Story 53. That experience is worthless because their generation is special and has access to information that others do not. Story 54. You can actually multitask. You are just doing 3 things badly at the same time. Story 55. Hard work is essential. You have to put in the hours to achieve what you want. Things do not just fall into your lap. Story 56. That they will be able to own a home if they work hard and keep working, and that there are enough hours in the day to achieve it. Story 57. I live in a college town where you do not need to look both ways before crossing the street at a crosswalk. There has always been a rumor that if you are hit on the college campus, your tuition is paid. This is not true, and it can be the pedestrian's fault if you do not look and cross the street into an oncoming car. Yes, even at a crosswalk in this town. Story 58. They are funny. Their sense of humor is stuck at the meme level and they never improved. Story 59. Being able to afford a home as a single person is possible even with a decent salary. I have not met anyone from an older generation who understands this. It is a completely different environment. Story 60. If they wanted to, they would, but you want to and won't. This is why everyone is single or unwilling to be vulnerable with others. Story 61. Their boundaries are their own responsibility. It is their responsibility to maintain their boundaries and mental health, not anyone else's. Story 62. Harassing strangers for likes is not acceptable, children. Story 63. They are unique. They forget that the other 8.1 billion people on Earth are similarly unique. Story 64. Millennials think they were the frontline soldiers in the war against the tyranny of the baby boomers. Sorry, that was Generation X. We just did not have the internet to wage our mighty battles. Baby boomers were our parents, and we had to deal with them directly, grow up with them, and push back against their narrow-minded ways. When we wanted to organize marches and parades and get people to notice things, we had to do it with mailing lists, magazines, word of mouth, and phone lists. We did not have the internet to draw attention to ourselves. We had to do it in person. Story 65. Most of their new trends, such as fashion and slang, are just recycled from past generations. This is valid for every younger generation. Story 66. Just because you post your entire life online does not mean people actually care. But parents do it too. Again, I hate to break it to you. Story 67. Using artificial intelligence makes them smarter. It is like saying having your girlfriend do your homework makes you smarter. Story 68. That they have some sort of mental trauma or social anxiety that they need medication for, and that they can use as an excuse to avoid doing things. Story 69. Your feelings matter only within your protected space. When life gets hard, do not expect others to cater to your needs. Story 70. That they are owed anything in life. Work hard like everyone else has to. You are not special. Story 71. The best video games are those where players shoot at each other for 5 minutes before the game ends. Story 72. Wikipedia contains errors, as taught by school teachers to discourage students from using it as a source. Story 73. That they do not get a say in politics or that they can safely ignore politics. Both attitudes are gravely problematic. Story 74. That my child does not have to clean her room. It is unpleasant in there. Story 75. That kids would leave the house on a Saturday morning with their friends and probably not return until later that evening with no tracking, and it was awesome. Story 76. That Zoom and Microsoft Teams can replace in-person communication and collaboration. Story 77. A college degree is not guaranteed to get you a well-paying job. If it doesn't, it is not a waste of time. College is about learning to think critically and being exposed to new ideas. Your success depends on you. A degree opens the door to new opportunities but does not walk the path for you. It does not replace experience. You still need to be able to sell your skills and show motivation to succeed. Most roles require starting from the bottom and working up to a higher salary. Many students believe college is useless if it does not guarantee a high-paying job. This mindset can hinder their chances of employment. A college degree alone will not help someone succeed without the right attitude and effort. Story 78. I have noticed that they are strangely puritanical. Sex work must be made illegal, kinks are mental disorders, BDSM is always abusive, and any portrayal of sexual relationships is fetishizing. Aside from the fact that many of these people are not old enough to hold valid opinions on such topics, it is genuinely disturbing how many younger individuals feel entitled to strangers' private lives, even compared to homophobic baby boomers. Story 79. The funniest thing is that everyone is complaining about how the new generation believes the internet is an accurate representation of the real world, and then they complain about the stereotypes found only on the internet. Story 80. The term boomers, short for baby boomers, refers to someone born between 1946 and 1964. After World War II ended, people made up for lost time, causing an increase in the number of babies born. Many younger individuals label every adult whose opinion differs from their own as a boomer. Last weekend, I overheard a man in his late 20s or early 30s call another man who was about 20 years older a boomer. All the older man did was tap on the young man's car window and say, "Hey, you should probably pull a few feet farther forward if you don't want to get a ticket for blocking the hydrant like that." Instead of thanking the middle-aged man, the young man replied, "Okay, boomer," and left his car where it was. I hope he got a ticket. I really do. Baby boomers are not universally horrible, hateful, bigoted, greedy, or destructive. This may surprise many younger people who blame every problem on the planet on everyone born during that 18-year span. Incidentally, that generation created the tools they used to browse Reddit. Story 81. People should not have to work hard to earn money. I am not talking about a basic income or ensuring everyone is housed and has enough to eat. I am referring to the expectation that people should be able to afford to live alone in a one-bedroom apartment on minimum wage. I do not believe anyone in the United States has been able to do that, at least not in my lifetime or in my parents' lifetime. We always knew we would have to have at least one roommate, if not 3 or 4. Story 82. Multiple people have told me that young men nowadays generally do not perform oral sex because they think it is unpleasant. Listen, guys, vaginas have never been less unpleasant. It is one of the best ways to please your partner and to avoid being selfish. I just hope they are not expecting oral sex in return. Story 83. Yesterday, I had a person from the millennial generation tell me that the stock market and the entire financial system were a scam. Story 84. Paywalls are bad, and work produced by companies should be free. The belief that information must be free, an ethic from the early internet days, did significant damage to news organizations. Story 85. Living without being addicted to a small computer in their pocket. Story 86. That we in the United States are not being poisoned by the food we eat and the water we drink so that we will not be perpetually unhealthy and require numerous pharmaceuticals to fix the issues caused by the food, drink, and the drugs themselves. Story 87. Life is not always fair, and complaining does not guarantee fair treatment. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.